Good morning, Stings. Today is Friday, and these are your morning announcements. Today is National Cherry Cobbler Day. Use the hashtag Cherry Cobbler Day to post on your social medias.
And remember, in the event of a lockdown, there are simple steps to take that will keep us all safe.
Front door, 5 students, 2 staff members. Some people will say it's just some kid playing. The problem is we can't take that risk anymore.
Bang! Bang! You hear shots coming down the hallway. You hear screaming. Bang! Bang! You give your kids to that assistant. You draw your firearm, you open the door.
How you guys doing?
Very well, thank you.
It's imperative that first responders keep track of faculty members' locations.
Press. This is the stuff we do for the school resource officer. For the students directly, this is the Bulletproof desk.
I heard a lot of problematic statements. Were you suggesting that somebody should have been armed and killed somebody?
Take a deep breath in and exhale slowly.
Put your hands up, don't move!
Slowly. Put your hands up, don't move! Slowly.
Don't shoot, don't shoot!
Slowly.
Full battle rattle.
Slowly. Slowly. Slowly.
Ready! Fire!
The building lockdown drill is now over. You may resume your normal activities.
Well, it's really nice to meet you. And I was, as, how do I say this, with not bad, and then in terms that are not bad marketing. I guess what I thought was originally when I was approached about seeing Bulletproof, your documentary, you know, having been a parent or just a citizen of this country, you know, my initial feeling was, oof, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to, you know, to kind of watch this. But, you know, it really wasn't. It was provocative. I mean, certainly in all the best ways. No, I guess this begs the actual question, which is, you know, what inspired you? Such a cliche question, but what did inspire you to make this film? Like, what led up to it? Was there something sitting in your head, or was there an incident, or tell me about that?
I mean, it's true about that. You know, I was thinking about this yesterday. You know, the film had its festival run like throughout COVID, basically.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of like Zoom interviews over the course of that period, and now that we're about to have a theatrical release, we're, you know, sort of doing a handful of, you know, other interviews, and I'm trying to approach it in a new way. Like, you know, you get used to telling the same stories.
Of course.
So there is a story that is, you know, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 20 years off and on. Brooklyn College for the last 5 years. I was at the College of Staten Island before that. I taught in public high schools in New York City in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, you know,
you're an educator.
I'm an educator, and, you know, I've sort of had this like twin practice of sort of making creative work and being an educator. And so the creative work was mostly filmmaking, but also playing music and like touring and doing installation work. And, you know, in the last 5 to 10 years, it's been primarily film, but yeah, so I'm an educator, and so, you know, there's sort of one piece of this that's like, right, I was having a conversation with some students from Brooklyn College after a mass shooting had happened on the West Coast in like 2015, and you know, it opened up into a deeper conversation that was not about mass shootings, which was more about sort of racialized violence in the United States and white supremacy and policing in schools, and this one student remarked that it was a very American conversation, and I thought that is very true. And what exactly is American about it? And that was one of the sparks. There were a bunch of different sparks.
A British student.
It was. And so that's a story that's like that's the story that I've told, right? But it's not really. It was part of it.
Okay, you're gonna have to go back now to all those people in those Q&As on the festival circuit.
I mean, it's like the tidy story, right? I mean, it happened, and it did spark some initial interest. Another conversation with a friend whose brother was a former Navy SEAL, who was then I found running these workshops called How to Survive a School Shooting. I think essentially what was happening is that there were a series of moments, kind of around 2014, 2015. In conversations with people where I kept thinking about this notion of safety and what does it mean to be safe? And that was kind of coupled with a number of conversations that were about this kind of industry around school security. And I started looking into it. And I think now, and maybe even like post kind of the Parkland shootings, this sort of idea of this school security industry, bulletproof products, teacher firearms training, all this stuff is a bit more in the kind of popular discourse. But at the time for me, I was like, this is happening, right? So my sort of first impulse was to start doing some research. And I found out there was a school safety trade show in DC. And this was maybe even before that conversation with my students. I can't remember. It was like around the same time. Sure. And I went to DC to this trade show. Not with the camera. I just sort of went as an educator and talked to people and was like seeing, and I just thought, oh, there's a film here. And so it started off where I was like, wow, this industry is massive and, has such deep ties to the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex to policing. And there was a certain, I think,
saying a pipeline.
Yeah. Right. And as an educator who's worked in New York City, there's, I had been thinking about that in terms of, communities in which I was working. And this felt different. And I think at first I was drawn to the wow, this is, teachers being trained with firearms or bulletproof whiteboards or all, it seemed very extreme and dramatic or at least surprising and kind of sensational. And I think, what you just said, like the sort of this pipeline notion, which makes us, really think about the school to prison pipeline, pretty quickly it was like, oh wait, these things are all connected actually. And they're playing out differently in different communities depending on who lives in those communities, right? But certainly there's been this security industry, police, surveillance, et cetera, in communities of color for decades. And this expansion of this industry and this expansion of policing and surveillance into sort of white suburban communities as a result of fear of mass shootings is, this is all connected. So it kind of started off with a lot of thinking about that. And it really started off with a focus kind of on industry. And then as I started making the film, and actually in particular, as my partner and I were going to have a kid, which was an abstraction at first, and then it became more and more real, and we had the kid. But finding out that our baby was going to be male sexed actually kind of shifted my direction in the film in some way. And I was already thinking a lot about whiteness and masculinity. None of this, again, is like, this is not the text of the film, but for me, it was like subtext. It was informing a lot of my decisions. And I started thinking a lot about masculinity and the performance of masculine identity, and thinking a lot about being a parent of a boy and what, and who was going to go and be in schools, and just sort of led me to really expand the way that I was thinking about what we were filming. It really sort of shifted the film.
Well, I think I understand why you chose the British student scenario. It's much quicker.
It is. It's easy,
easier
but
to digest.
It's easier to digest. But I think there is something. I think for me, making a film is a process. Like for everyone, making a film is a process, and it sort of took a lot of twists and turns. And I think ultimately it started off here, and then by the time we were in production, it was here, and then it evolved.
One thing it made me think about is, as I was watching this, and it's very taste style. It appears to be just observing, you know. But one thing I was watching and I was thinking, God, America is such a reactive, you know, it's country. Like, we wait till the problem is almost insurmountable. We don't deal with the roots of the problem. So, you know, which is to help young people, to create programs for young people. So, as your film eventually does show, with the teacher who kind of does the meditations, right? But essentially, all in all, we're a reactive country where we just come up with these insane solutions, like these security and, you know, programs for teachers. So you have teachers learning how to use firearms, I mean, as a solution. It's like, but then you start to think, which is something I hadn't thought of, which I just have through our conversation, which is, oh, well, there's an imperative. There is a strong there becomes an economy around it. No wonder. It's like, that's an essentially American practice. It's, you know, now you have these gun shows. You have a whole subculture around this, and people are, you know, it's creating a monetization.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's true, and I think that it's. I mean, the sort of market-driven solution coupled with the kind of fear that is you know it really works, right? In some way, that it's like there are school administrators and parents who want to see like actionable solutions, but I think it does, you know, beg the question that you raised, which is what's the problem, right?
Yeah.
If we have, there's the you know, even saying that there is a solution is implying that this is a definable, discrete problem that is solvable with, you know, by purchasing something. And, you know, that's obviously simplifying it. There are a lot of people out there who are doing really good, nuanced, smart work. But there is this kind of feeling of like, well, yeah, here's some Band-Aid solutions, which, you know, there's a sense of urgency, but I think you're right. It does kind of, there are a lot of siloed responses, right? Where people are like, well, I'm a police officer and I can teach this set of skills. So this is what I bring to it. And here's how we solve the problem. Or I'm this person and I bring this set of skills. Or, you know, we need to fix this now because I'm getting pressure from parents. But, you know, like you said, it does really beg the question, like, what is the problem? And if we're going to talk about solutions, is the solution something that you can buy, or is the solution like a much less quantifiable long-term cultural shift that is much, and if you can't, and if you have to strike a balance between those, or sort of have a multi-pronged approach, how do you do that in a way that is, you know, is not sort of it's not creating sort of quote unquote solutions that perpetuate violence. In fact, that use the same kind of violence to
yeah. I mean, Todd, it's, you're just also, you know, they show, there's one of the things you get to see are the security. You know, step in and correct me because I don't really have a comfortable language myself. Yeah, I haven't developed that, but around the, you know, the security folks at the schools and all the monitors and this technology, the software technology around that, they're showing they're you know, trying to prevent or they can detect whether anybody brings in a firearm, for instance, like kids. Well, there's so many firearms in every household. I mean, it's prevalent. So, you know, it just seems insane that the solution is to arm teachers. You know, it's just making the gun culture even more steeped in our culture. It's crazy. Right?
Well, I mean, it's like, I mean, I think that is, you know, I have strong and not dissimilar personal feelings and personal responses to that as well. And, you know, in making the film, I really thought a lot about, you know, restraint and in that restraint, right, in sort of meeting people where they were and just showing what they were up to, you know, it became, I think I said this a little bit before, but it became clear to me that in fact, like, when we can talk about it in a conversationally and be like, wow, that's crazy that that's happening.
Yeah.
But you know, if we think about it for longer than a minute, like, actually it makes perfect sense, right? If we trace, there are historical threads that we can trace over centuries, in fact, that that, you know, if we do so, makes it entirely unsurprising that this stuff is happening, right? Like, it's not shocking, and yet it is at the same time, right? Like, it doesn't. It's I pretty quickly I was like, oh, it is not surprising that this is happening. That doesn't mean I agree with it, or
right. No.
The film isn't about what, you know, obviously isn't about what I necessarily agree or disagree with, but it sort of, I think the initial impulse was, wow, this is crazy, and then it was like, oh, actually, that's too easy in some way. Like, that's too easy of a film to make, right? Like, and it's not the kind of film that I'm interested in making. So how do I dial back a little bit?
You even have like the statistics and all that business at the end. I can't remember if you don't do any of it.
No,
really remarkable.
Definitely not.
I really, you know, appreciate it. I think it's very powerful as is, you know. And was Frederick Wiseman an influence? Because you can you see it there, sort of. I mean, you can, except that maybe you know he's. I'm sorry, but even I don't think he would ever have it. You know, he seems to. You know, that because he doesn't seem to have any agenda present, but something does you develop as you watch the films on some, you know, more subtle subtext. You know,
I mean, I think I have noticed that, you know, anyone who sort of makes a observational film to some degree it will get a Wiseman reference and stuff. But I think you're right in that Wiseman does really specifically focus on institutions. Right. And in some ways this film is more focused on institutions and less on individuals. But I think that, you know, I think Wiseman is a great filmmaker, and I think that I really have a lot of respect for how he's able to, you know, both observe and come in without an apparent agenda, and through juxtaposition and through these choices actually sort of reveal something pretty profound in his films. You know, certainly he's an influence, and there are a lot of other influences. Harun Farokhi, you know, Jem Cohen, who worked a little bit on the film and is you know, as a friend and collaborator. But like, you know, there are you know, and contemporaries like Brett Story. But I think that I was interested in observing, and there are some sort of formalist elements to the film, but it's not rigid in that way. Like, there are interviews. People do talk to camera, and I felt like, you know, I was interested in. I wasn't interested in making a talking.
That, though.
Right. I mean,
it's not the most powerful moments in the film. So
no, I think that there was. Go on.
I just want to give an example of one that is, which is, you know, you have a drill. We're watching a drill, meaning a safety drill. If should a shooter come into the building? There's a number of drills actually, but this one involves students. And one of the students said that he was feeling traumatized by the drills, you know, more than he felt he would by an actual incident. Of course, you know, it's not true, but it wouldn't play out quite that way. But the point is still there, and it has a lot of impact, you know.
Yeah, and I think that, I just think that there were a lot of influences, and I thought in making it that, like, at first I thought no interviews, and then I thought, you know, let's in some places it makes sense, and if there's a way that we can integrate these that doesn't feel like it's taking away from the observational elements and that it feels organic, then in some places I think it was useful, but but I think, you know, playing around, like, there are a couple of archival segments as well, right? There's one that's the sort of metal detectors being installed in Dallas and Chicago schools in the 90s, and there's one sort of assembly of footage of media, sort of television news reporters preparing to report, and so I think there's definitely a strong observational sort of cinema verite thread in the film, and then there's, you know, pulling on some other strategies as well, which is fun. Like, it's, you know,
what makes it feel like it's such a verite film, even though we're sort of saying, nah, maybe not such a pure version of that, but is that the behavior that we're watching is so surprising still. You know, it's kind of almost shocking to see some of this behavior. I'm not talking about bad behavior. I'm just talking about that you feel like, you know, that sort of has the most resonance in a way, you know, those scenes. where you're just the camera's just watching that.
Yeah.
I want to remind people though that we're New Yorkers, and the Metrograph is a great theater, which there's not that many around anymore, like the Metrograph theater, right? Yeah. Can you just briefly just say how this came about? Did they help distribute the film?
So Grasshopper is distributing the film?
Grasshopper Films. Okay, right. But it's going to be at the Metrograph on the 29th of October.
Yeah, so it'll be on the 29th of this month. Yeah, it'll be 29th through, I think they haven't, right now it's on their calendar from the 29th to the 31st, and then they're releasing, I think probably Monday, Tuesday, maybe a couple more dates the following week. So yeah, that's super exciting. Metrograph is a great theater, and we've been, we've held out, like the film was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest in March of 2020, and we...
Was there an issue with that?
Well, we just decided it wasn't right. Right. So literally on the eve that we finished the DCP for the film, the festival canceled, and so it's been a long journey. And the film has had an excellent festival life, despite my not having been able to experience any of it in person. So I'm super thrilled that we held out, and that Grasshopper and Metrograph have been awesome, and that it'll be the first time that I actually get to sit in a theater with other humans and get to experience people watching the film, which for me is like it's really meaningful.
It's congratulations for that, and then it will be followed by a national expansion, and I imagine this should have a very fruitful educational distribution, because this film in particular really seems like that would make sense, and it kind of be ironic. It's like
that's the hope, and then it'll be on people. Say again.
They like showed in high schools, because turning the camera to themselves or the mirror at themselves.
No, I'm pushing for, we'll do it. We can do a double feature of Bulletproof and Wiseman's High School.
Right. Well, I should say that this is an 80-something minute film as opposed to a 4.5 at Frederick Wiseman film. Panic.
It's mercifully, it's contained. It's like 82, 83 minutes.
Although,
and then and then we have a broadcast on Independent Lens in February, which is also great.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Independent Lens on PBS February when?
I don't know if we have the exact date yet.
In February?
Maybe in February. Yeah.
Fine. In February on Independent Lens. Fantastic news.
We'll push the we'll push the theatrical for now. I guess that's why we're
absolutely. But it's good to know. I'll put it in the back of my head, and I'll be able to help get the word out again in February.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your having made Bulletproof and being able to get to see it and talk to you about it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you watching and and chatting with me. It's nice to get to hear your take on it.
Yeah. Well, it's an important thing to watch. It's and grapple with and talk about. So I think the theatricals are really the way to go, because to see it alone and then just to sort of ruminate is fine, but it's the real benefit will be people standing in the lobby afterwards and really kind of talking. You're going to be in a lot of theater lobbies, I think, trying to get to your dinner on Success.
well, yeah. It's sort of like a completion of the film to get to hear other people respond to it. So I'm really excited about it.
Good luck with it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.